And I think every business owner, it depends on how you're set up, has to have a little bit of buffer from the sales team if they can. But when you say something to them, they need to respect it.
If a roofing sales rep gets to his number on his 4th appointment of the month and it's, June 3rd,
I'm going golfing.
Yeah, you're kicking back. You're throwing that bitch in cruise control. Welcome back to another episode of the Mission Control Podcast, brought to your boy. Well, wait, I messed up. Brought to you by your boy, Mike Stearns with, you guessed it, Ascend Digital. Shout out to the team at Roofer. If you need instant roof quotes, roof measurements, CRM, great team to talk to. Proposals that will give your prospects no choice but to buy from you. Hit up the team at Roofer. There's going to be a link down in the description. Ken Bianchi, welcome to the studio.
Thanks, Mike.
It's been a long time coming. Christian's been telling me for months how you're going to come, and I'm like, I don't know who to resent, you, Christian, or both.
Yeah,
I think it was a Christian thing.
It was probably Christian.
Yeah.
It's been a while. We've been running a business, how it gets, and he kept saying, "Hey, are you going to come in and do it?" And I said, "Well, yes, I will." And got through for Q1 and doing pretty good in Q2. So I said it's time to come right before June. So,
well, I'm working on empathy actively. So while I'm not there yet, I've made great strides, and I appreciate you showing up.
Thanks, man. Empathy. You ever do one of those, personal profile things?
I try to stay away from them.
Yeah, I do too.
Yeah. Tell me how terrible I am.
Empathy was my biggest thing to work on, so we'll be fine.
It's weird. Nice segue. You're in sales. You've been in sales for a long time, sales leadership. So we're going to talk about sales today.
Cool.
A little bit. Can you sell me this pen?
I'm not really good at that. So I would probably say, I'd probably go, instead of selling you on the pen, I'd probably say, Mike, this is kind of a cool pen. What do you do with it?
To which I would say you'd probably write with it.
Why did you pick this style pen?
I like the way that it glides across the paper, and I notice I lean into my writing a lot, and it doesn't smudge like a gel pen would.
Yeah. All right. So we have a new pen profile that I think you'd like. Very similar to this, kind of state of the art. Give it a try. See if it works on your papers and then your estimates, and then I'll come back at you.
I mean, cost is just such a consideration. These pens are cheap.
Well, what happens when your pens smudge all over your estimate? Do you get good numbers?
No, it makes it hard to read.
Can your people read it that on the other end? What do they think about your personality and profile if you're sloppy?
That's fair, which is also why you should use Roofer proposals, folks. If you're still doing pen and paper for your estimates, get with it.
That is true. Technology has come a long way, right? Like, this is something I do back when I started in sales and marketing. Mm-hmm. Pens, Hagstrom maps, things like that. Now everybody has technology, and you got to change with the times. So
it's a beautiful thing.
I wish I had a nice new pen for you, but I don't. But I'll keep this.
He's going to keep it, folks. Unreal. This guy. So I've always said, whether you're selling pens, maps, Girl Scout cookies, websites, like fundamentally sales is all the same thing. Or roofs, if you're selling roofs. You have somebody that has a need. You have somebody that can fill that void, right? And how you bridge that gap, how obvious you make that. Because sometimes people don't know what they need.
Exactly.
Or they don't even know the need's there. And then some guy hammers outbound calls and they're like, oh, there is actually a need. Let me show you how big this need is. How much is costing you in money, sanity, time, all these different things. So what do you, throughout your career, you said you started with, pens and maps and things like that. What is it that you're in sales leadership for now?
I would say, I'm in sales leadership for kind of bridging the gap between old school and new school, how you sell and how you treat customers, right? And I think one of the things that I've always done well is more the personal touch, build the relationships, right? Like, so I think sometimes people get very transactional. One of the things that's, I do well is build business relationships for long-term success. Because, there's some movies back in the day, Glengarry, Glen Ross. You probably saw the one with the siding contractors, right? Mm-hmm. So there's a lot of different things out there, and I try to not be that cliched. I'm more, let's build a relationship. It's not all about closing. It's about building a relationship and being there for the long haul. And I think that's what's made me successful in my career, because that's kind of how I've always been.
Yeah.
I'd rather have a relationship, honest. You still got to close the deal and you still got to get sales, but there's a way to do it. And I think the value proposition is very important and building that relationship. So that's kind of what I do at Safetec. And I learned that at an early age. I think I was taught that on my first career move. And we can get into that if you want a little bit.
Yeah, we can, we'll get there.
All right.
We'll get there. Right. I'm going to keep steering.
All right, man.
So I couldn't agree more as far as relationships. And there's nothing worse than commission breath. That transactional, and you feel it in the approach. It's not just when they're asking for the close. You can smell it a mile away. And it's like so like this podcast or content that we do, we lead with value, right? Give people information, interview people that can shed perspective, value as far as the trades are concerned, their journey to inspire, help make better, optimize process, whatever that looks like. And we don't charge for it. It's all free. You're welcome. And, we have guests kind enough like you to come in and help share those experiences to add value to the audience. This ends up being a lead gen tool. Like people reach out to us because they feel like there's a relationship there. We've given you value. Now we start the conversation. The conversation looks a lot differently. What would you say if somebody feels like they're focusing more towards transactional? What would you say is the step to take to say, this is how you would move it into more of a relationship-based selling model?
I think the first thing, when we bring people in to work with us, right? The first thing we teach them and train them on is to be able to communicate with people on a kind of personal level, right? Yeah. So, I always try to find, or I want my reps or people I'm training to find personal connection with that person, right? It's if you're out selling roofing, you're out selling infection control products like I do, or windows and doors where I started. It's really what that you want to find really something about that person and be honest, share some things about you, share some things about them, and just get a personal relationship going so you understand really what they want. And we get a lot of people that come into the sales game and they think that it's all transactional.
Yeah.
And so we start with the personal side. You got to know our products. You got to know what they need, but you got to know something about that person you're working with.
Pay attention and take an interest.
Yeah, listen.
If you're going to do a roof and the customer calls and reschedules because their wife's in labor and they call you back a week later, your first question should be, how's your wife? How's the baby?
Exactly.
Right? Just genuinely just being a decent person, like that should take priority over, are you going to buy this roof? Yeah,
we do a good job. Like our team it's a smaller team, right? But sports are a good way, right? Hey, did you see the game? If you're calling on somebody, if you're in the local area, it's one thing. We call all throughout the country, right? So if you're talking to someone in Kansas City, odds are they're a Chiefs fan, right? So, you start the dialogue with something like that.
It's so funny you say that. Yesterday, we had somebody reach out to me. He called me twice. I don't love that. Back to back. So I get to his call. We have a conversation. He's like, I'm outside of Boston. I service Maine and the New England area. I was like, are you a Pats fan? He goes, oh yeah. I was like, well, this ain't gonna fucking work. And, we have a laugh and he's like, look, dude, we had our time. I'm like, you ruined 20 years of my life. He's like, well, now it's your time. Yeah. I said, and how does that feel? How does that make you feel?
How does that feel?
I was like, well, we still won't win a goddamn Super Bowl because, Buffalo's just a bunch of losers. Yeah. Hopefully we fix that this year.
I think so.
I mean, I went to Kansas City to watch that game.
Ugh.
Yeah.
Yeah. But in sales, that's what it is, right? More so than transaction. But I think, it's like anything else. I think it depends on what you're in it for, right? Sure. As a salesperson or a business owner, how you want your people to be. And I think that's important. It doesn't matter what it is. At the end of the day, it's success rate and closing, right? And getting those orders. But you have to do it in a way that sets people at ease, in my opinion. Yeah. Like you said, people can smell commission breath, and
it fucking stinks.
It's not good. So I took a couple mints before I came here. But that was a red wine I drank last night. Christian knows I I kind of like that.
And boy, nothing wrong with that. What's the most common mistake you see salespeople make?
Oh, that's a good question. I would say the common mistake really is just focusing on you and not the customer. And they just spew product data.
Yeah. Okay. Feature them to death.
Yes. Instead of asking questions are the number one thing. And then you ask a question, and I'm not always good at it because I like to talk a little bit, right? I like to share my knowledge and opinions. Just kidding. I'm pretty shy a lot of times in front of a lot of people. One-on-one, I'm really good, right? Mm-hmm. And I think what you got, salespeople, what they have to realize is when you ask a question, like you just did of me, what are you doing? You're listening, right? Mm-hmm. So once somebody asks that question, shut up and listen to who you're speaking with. And listen for their cues because they'll give them to you.
They'll tell you exactly what they want, how they want it, everything.
Everybody does it. If you're selling roofing, and because I've been in the building material trades early on in my life, you're going to have probably 2 people or 3 or whoever in that room with you at a home, right? Yeah. It's going to be the wife, if they have one, and the husband. Yeah. Let them both talk and listen to both of them.
Yeah.
And then you'll get your cues.
Yeah, and there's nothing worse than those folks that are listening just to get the next word in, and you could see it on their face, and they interrupt, and I'll tell you, it really grinds my gears. Not even just in a sales environment. It's just it just comes off as so disingenuous.
Well, in life, right?
Yeah.
If you're just having a cute conversation, everyone's got something to say. Yeah. Listen to that person. We got a guy at our place that is. He just rambles.
Yeah.
Okay. But he's our best sales guy because he does ramble.
Yeah.
And he will talk you to death. Mm-hmm. But before he gets into the ramble, he's awesome at that personal touch.
Sure.
So people put up with him and love buying from him. Christian probably knows him.
Yeah. It's remarkable over my career, how many people you see get the person to where they're ready to buy and then talk them out of the sale.
Oh God. Right. It's
like they're waving the I'm buying flag and then you just don't shut the fuck up. And then they're like, I'll think about it.
Yeah. When you get the right signal, right. You should shut the fuck up.
Yeah. Oh, what is, it could be from people in your team or just an observation in general. Is there a certain type of quality or soft skill that you think most closely associates with the likelihood of success in sales?
I truly believe you have to be a honest and trustworthy person, right? Yeah. Because if you think about it, if you have any of, if they can smell that you're not, right, like you said, when it comes down to a commission person, I think it's difficult. And I think you have to be somebody who truly wants to help that person, right?
Yeah.
Like, because salespeople got a bad rap as it is half the time, right? You start out and people know you're trying to sell them something.
Yeah.
So I think sincere, honesty is the way to go personally, right? So when we hire, I don't really hire anybody for sales other than I hire them for their personality and if they're a fit. And then we train them up our way. If the person is honest and sincere, that's where I start. You can't have somebody who's introverted really. You got to have someone who does like people.
Sure.
Right. So
can't send some curmudgeon out in the field.
Right. Well, that's why I don't do as many calls anymore. Yeah. Because I've become more the curmudgeon within our company, right? And so my sales force and my team has taken a different approach. I'm just kidding. Yeah. I can turn it on and off. Sometimes you are a curmudgeon, but I'm a curmudgeon when I'm trying to make sure they're hitting their goals. Because ultimately it's about hitting your revenue goals and making sure you're profitable as an organization.
Right.
But there's a way you can do that. And I think
a lot of ways you could do it.
Yeah,
some good, some better than others.
Right. Yeah. Because everyone's got their own model, right? We want to be value add and we want to be someone's friend and give them something they truly need. That's how we work.
So I'd assume a lot of salespeople, and this is what I've experienced, but maybe my experience is different than yours, but a lot of salespeople tend to have similar personalities. And there's variations, right? To what the composition of that person and who they are, but they're usually competitive. They have some sort of ego, drive. There's certain things that motivate them.
I'm laughing a little bit here because yes.
Go ahead, take over.
Yes.
Yeah.
I think, and again, salespeople out there, you're all going to get mad at me, but I'm one of them. Sometimes we can't sit still very long, and sometimes we're not the most detail-oriented people in the world. But we're aggressive. We like stuff. We like to make money.
Not afraid of rejection.
Right. You ask a question, a lot of times you're going to ask, and you're going to hear no more than often. So you got to have a little bit of a chip on your shoulder, right?
Yeah.
Kind of like that defensive back who gets burned over the top, and then he's right there the next play. I think salespeople are.
Unless it's Kyer at Elam, then he just gets burnt again.
He was terrible.
That guy sucks.
Yeah.
Sorry, Kyer.
But I think you're right there, where salespeople, the traits are aggressiveness, want to make money, want a transaction. Yeah. And I think that's fine. It's just how you tailor them to do it.
Right.
And when you got to get the right ones to do it and do it your way. So I think you got to take that, mold it, and that's important. Like mold it to your business style. Yeah. Right. Because ultimately you want to feel respected on both sides of the transaction.
Sure. So how long of a runway do you give a new salesperson? Because obviously you talked about how you kind of qualify them as far as personality and fit, but you could have a great personality and you could feel like they're a good fit, because if they're a decent salesperson, they should be able to at least sell you on the idea that you might be a good fit, but they're not coachable, right? So you get to the part where you're trying to teach them your way, the Safetec way, and they're not coachable. How long of a runway do you give them to bring them up to speed to assimilate in the culture or get the fuck out?
Yeah. And I don't think there's any one answer there. I guess it depends, because I'm going to say if you
like a salesperson, right, it depends.
It does depend though. Because let's say you hire a seasoned veteran, right? I may give them less runway, right? For the main reason is, if we have a conversation, right, and we do an interview, and we agree to work together, hopefully, right, I'm going to kind of understand who you are, and you're going to understand what I'm looking for, right? And I think salespeople have to have adaptability, right, to wherever they're going.
Sure.
So if that person comes in and we were on the same page, and then I get them in and they're not that person and can't come to what we expect, I may be a little quicker on that. Yeah. I would never just someone come in and within 2 months, 3 months, get rid of them unless they're unethical, right?
Sure.
But I give someone like that 6 months probably if they weren't performing, right? And then hope our team can train them up to transition how we want them. Somebody who's a little newer or younger in the trade, we'd probably give a lot more leeway, right? Now, if we've done it at our company, I'll hire somebody in sales, for sales. Well, we find that person maybe doesn't fit there. It's the wrong seat on the bus. I'd always look at, could I get them in customer service? Because maybe they're really good with customers, but they're more of an account manager, not really a salesperson. So I may give that person a little more rope so I don't boot them out of the organization and lose a good person. So it really depends on what your model is. Our model is more consulting, value add, long-term sales. We want to build our customer revenue year after year. So we're in it for the long term with a customer, because they're mainly distributor people that we're working with, right? We're the manufacturer, we're selling to distributor reps. So it is longer term. If you're in more of a transactional role where you need faster revenue, fill that pipeline faster, then you may boot somebody out quicker.
Right.
Yeah. So it depends on what your company does.
It makes a lot of sense.
And I've been on all three levels, I've been at manufacturing, been at distribution, and I've been at dealers. So, I kind of know how some of them work. And so when we hire somebody, it depends where they come from on that, how long we keep them too.
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense. That's great insight. True or false? Generally speaking, salespeople will try to find the quickest way to make as much as possible with as little effort as possible.
Wow. Some of my teammates may not like this answer.
It's efficiency, baby.
Yeah. So I'm going to say true. I think sales folks do want to, get on to the next one as fast as they can. Right. Mm-hmm. So, and I look at it as, the funnel theory. Everyone probably heard that. You want to have multiple transactions, multiple conversations. You want to get more people in your pipeline, sure. Right? But sales guys will take shortcuts because that's kind of normal. So I think that's where you want that person to be good and efficient and move things into your pipeline. But your training has to be spot on to make sure they don't take those shortcuts. And I think that's where organizations sometimes fail, where they don't have a good training program for their new hires, especially.
Yeah.
And you can't let them fall into some of those traps.
Yeah, I couldn't agree more. And I'll take it a step further and say the ongoing management of those salespeople, right? Because we see it all the time. A customer will get 50 leads, 100 leads. I'm of the mindset, I've been in sales. I know a lot of salespeople. Every salesperson has a number, not the company issue quota. I need X amount of dollars, right? I need 15 grand a month. I need 6 grand a month. I need 20 grand a month, whatever it is, they got a number, and whether they tell you it or not, they probably won't tell you it. But regardless of what you're selling, if a company's investing money on branding and advertising to get you opportunities to get to that number, once they get there, I don't want to say they couldn't care less about your number, but those numbers probably align to some degree. It might be a little higher, a little bit lower, but all the meanwhile, if a roofing sales rep gets to his number on his 4th appointment of the month and it's, June 3rd,
I'm going golfing.
Yeah, you're kicking back, you're throwing that bitch in cruise control, and you're going to start cherry picking leads. You're not going to work every lead the same way as if it's the 27th of the month and you're at 0 in commission, the way you're going to close out those last 1, 2, 3, 4 days. If you don't effectively manage those people and they don't feel as if there's accountability to make sure that what they're doing or not doing, the likelihood of that happening is significant.
Right. No, I agree with that. And I think, compensation programs for salespeople are important also for that reason. Right. And what I mean by that is if that salesperson has a number, right, you got to find a way to get them to go above that number.
Right.
Right. And that's setting the expectation, hiring the right people. Right. And then making sure you're managing them as an organization, because I'll be honest, I was out there a long time. I've been in the game 41 years, somewhere in there, maybe.
How's that possible when you're 39?
Right. It's amazing. Christian, you better take care of this angle. Yeah. I just know I've been in a lot of different positions, right? Some that are more focused on salary and overall growth potential with the organization, and you all get compensated. And I've been in, a straight commission gig,
sure.
Where yes, I really have a number, right? So when I did hit my number, I like to play a lot of golf back in the day.
Yeah.
But if the management team allows you, once you hit your number, to just do whatever, that's not good either, because you fall in a lot of bad habits then as an individual, right? And then I've been on, a blend, and I think it's key that you said it, manage your people, manage your expectation, and try to help them break through and go further, right? Because salespeople will, once they hit their number, maybe stop. Not stop, but I got guys that do that all the time, right?
Yeah.
I hit my number.
It's less of a problem if you're not spending thousands and thousands of dollars to keep the leads coming to them. But they're not going to say, hey, Ken, I'm at my number for the month. So those leads you're paying for, you don't have to give me anymore because I'm not going to work them that hard.
See, and that's a tough thing, right? Because every organization, right? So classic salesperson complaint. You're not giving me enough leads.
Weird.
Right? You hear that all the time, right?
Yeah.
So when you do give them the leads, you better expect that they follow up, even if they have a number, right? So that's where managing that is important and making sure there's, we've had that issue and we just went to a different program, right? We kept the same program that we have for our team, but for that reason, we've spent a lot of money on new technology, right? Everybody has. That's what you talk about, right? Trying to get people new technology, more leads, right? I just think that as a company, then you have to build it in and say, we expect not only you to do this, but you have to do this on lead follow-up. And again, how do you set? I don't want them to become transactional per se, because, if you say you got to do 10 new calls a day on top of your normal work, they can make those calls and follow those leads up just kind of.
It's in the system. I documented it.
However, we as a company, we're now setting scripts. We're now setting the agenda, how those leads are followed up on, and they have to touch each step. And that's through more of our marketing team. And then our director of sales makes sure they're doing that sequence.
Right.
And I think that's how you could make sure they're doing their thing for their number, but also get them to buy in.
So hold on a second. You're telling me that somebody creates a process and then there's actually somebody accountable to hold them accountable to the process?
Yes. And I, being an old school guy, I don't always like being held accountable. However, being the business manager for our operation, when we're spending money, somebody has to be accountable. Like I'm accountable to my CEO, right?
Right.
So if I go to him and I say, I'm going to spend $50,000 on this new lead technology, somebody better be managing it. So that now, obviously, the buck stops with me to him, but my director of sales and my director of marketing are the ones that have to work together to keep the sales team following those protocols that we set in place.
Right.
So that's how I would suggest doing it, because you have to hold salespeople accountable.
My salespeople just won't do it. I just can't get them to do it. They won't document when they call people.
That's going to last only a certain amount of time.
Yeah.
Right? Like, because at the end of the day, okay, it's a perfect example, right? I got the guy who talks our customers to death. He's my number one sales guy.
Yeah.
Probably the least technology oriented other than me in the organization.
Sure.
I'm getting better, but we just have worked with him and we've trained him, and our marketing team has trained him. And when he sends out his emails the way he does, we bring him in, we talk to him, we say, dude, like you can't, you just, on these leads, you have to follow the sequence.
Right.
We don't care what you do with your existing customer base because it's working, but these need to follow up this way and you have to track them this way. And then you just got to monitor it. And if someone won't do it, it's going to be in their job performance review.
Right.
I hate to say it.
Yeah, handling a sales. How many salespeople do you have?
Right now we have 6 and then 2 customer service. So, and then 1 business development. So I'd say we're all in the sales role. We got 9.
Yeah. Seems like a nightmare to manage a sales team.
It's not fun.
Yeah.
It's a hard job. You got to have the right person doing it. And what I've found is I've grown in my career more into business development and the executive position.
Right.
It's critical underneath that level, you have the right person to manage that team, right? Because reality is I'm probably not good at it anymore, right? Because I just expect them to do their job, and I expect them to hit their numbers. You need somebody who can massage both sides of it and mentor them and help them get there. Doesn't always work well. Like, But I think it took me 3 years to find this new director of sales, and I finally hit I hit a home run.
Yeah.
I had a great guy. He retired. He was really good at that, mentoring the younger generation, the new salespeople that are coming in, and he really kept motivated. So I think that's the key. Like, you got to have somebody who knows how to work with those salespeople, right? And keep them on track.
And keep you from biting their head off when their numbers aren't where they need to be.
Right.
A nice little buffer both ways.
Good cop, bad cop. I see it.
Good cop, bad cop.
So like I can't always be the bad cop either, right? But I normally don't, and I think every business owner, it depends on how you're set up, has to have a little bit of buffer from the sales team if they can.
Sure.
But when you say something to them, they need to respect it. And if you're a little bit in a mood because your revenue's not where it needs to be, they got to also understand that they got a job to do as we do.
Right. Yeah, that makes a lot of sense. So if somebody out there needs a director of sales or a sales manager, they should just promote their best performing sales rep, right?
Yeah, I'd say no. I've done that. I've been promoted into roles that I probably shouldn't have been.
Yeah.
Because I may not have been suited for it on the management style at the time. I was promoted into sales because I was dangerous in my first position as a service guy for Anderson Windows.
Yeah.
I was either going to kill myself or kill somebody else when I was fixing windows and doors. So they put me into sales. Was I ready at the time? I'm not sure.
Yeah.
They had a good training program, so it really worked well for me to get me out of that position. But yeah, you got to promote. You don't want to take your best performer and put him into a management role if he's not good at it, and vice versa, right? You don't want to have a manager in a sales role if he's really a manager. So I think that's the hardest part in organizations, especially depending how big you are. You sometimes will put somebody in a role that they're not suited for. And that's a hard job as a business owner or a director of a sales or a business team.
Yeah.
Putting the right person in the right place. And a lot of times that manager is totally different than the sales guy, and he cannot do that role.
Yeah.
Well.
And a lot of times, they're good managers because they're detail oriented, they're organized, right? They can take a deep breath, analyze things, big picture. All the things that salespeople usually aren't great at doing.
They don't like it. Most of us don't like it. You can learn it over the years,
sure,
right? It's like anything else, because I was never the greatest detail person in the world. But the roles I'm in now, I have to be, and right. I work with the people that are very detailed, right? And that's where if you got that sales manager that's detailed, and then they can harness the talent of the salesperson, that's how the organizations roll.
Yeah. If you're thinking about promoting your best salesperson and manager, I would strongly encourage against it. I mean, there are situations where somebody's just so exceptional, they can do both. But then you think about what motivates that person and like, what is your comp plan going to look like as a sales manager? And if they let's say they do their job well, they become an incredible sales manager. They build up a team of 5, 7, 9 people, and they create 5, 7, 9 clones of themselves as far as productivity. They're probably not making as much as those 5, 7, or 9 people. And that may bother them.
It will bother some of them, right? And listen, I've been in that position. There's no question. And for a while, I wasn't good at it because I was taken from one of those top performers into a management role, right? And then you're relying on your whole team to perform so you hit your comp levels, right? And yeah, sometimes if you're not good at managing and you only have five good guys that are hitting their numbers and 4 that aren't, you may not get your bonus, but those 5 guys are, right? So, that's a true statement. And you got it. That's a learnable statement, but here's how I always had that conversation. Cause right now I want my guy to make more money than me, right? My director of sales. Cause if his guys are blowing it out of the water and he makes more comp throughout the year, great. But if I'm doing my job running the organization, I'm probably going to be taken care of at the end of the year, right? So that's a learned skill though, because people do take people have a hard time with that. If you take a high earner and then their sales guys are making more.
Yeah. I mean, it sucks because it's always in your face. Because if you're managing them correctly, you're always focusing on their numbers, and whether you're doing it consciously or subconsciously, you're probably figuring out exactly how much they're making, right? In the moment, everyone's like, "Fuck, dude, I used to make
what
that out."
What about me? Maybe I'll go
like my upside is this, and that's 70% of this, and this is the 15th of the month. They're already at that. Fuck. I mean, I wouldn't love it.
Yeah, I think it took me a while because when I came into this position at the Safetec, I was national sales manager, then VP of sales, right? Then executive vice president. And I was making more money in a couple of those roles.
Yeah.
But now it's flipped and I'm good with it, right? But my director of sale, I always try to change my compensation plans to fit the organization so we don't cause that so much.
Right.
You know?
That makes sense.
Yeah, because you got to make sure your director of sales is motivated too, right?
Sure. So other than just being altruistic and doing the right thing, give them some upside.
Yeah, you got to do
it. What's one thing that you know today that you wish you knew 41 years ago when you started?
That sales, while fun, is the never-ending game. You know, I look at it as you start at zero every new month, right? So it just keeps going, right? Like I know as a sales guy, if or even as an organization, you put, okay, fiscal year, you got this, that, you got a month, you got a quarter, but the reality is it just keeps going, right? You're always trying to, whatever position you're in a sales organization, you're constantly, it just keeps going and going and going. And you just got to be ready for that, right? And you're only as good as your last month or your last sale, right? And I think when you come into it, you think it's going to be different than that. But it's kind of a what have you done for me lately?
Big time
position, right?
Yeah. Well, that's why, a lot of companies, maybe not so much in the roofing space, but there's, you have your monthly goal, you have your quarterly goal. There's a 3-month, running average to where, if you're at this, you get this pay gate. If your 3-month average is here, because, the worst thing, like if you have a 3-month goal and somebody has a massive March, but they sucked in January, February, you don't want to give them the first quarter accelerator. Like you fucked us for 2 months. Yeah. Like, I'm not paying you extra. Like you're lucky you get this check and not out the fucking door. Right. So, I mean, there's some ways that you can kind of, manicure those plans to make it make sense. And it gets complicated though. It
does. And I think salespeople like 40 years ago when I started, there's a lot of me, right? Salespeople, we know, we talked about it earlier in this conversation. Salespeople are, I call them the wide receiver of the football team, right?
Terrell Owens.
Yeah, Terrell. There, it's a classic one. Or the guy who's now in New England, right? Stefan Diggs, right?
Boats and hose.
Yeah, Boats and hose. That song's funny. What movie was that?
Step Brothers.
Step Brothers, yeah. So salespeople, they don't always understand, and I didn't early on. And I wish someone would have told me, hey, look, it's not all about you all the time. Yeah. You're in this, but you're only as good as your last sale. And, you have to continue grinding to keep being a performer.
Right.
Right. Because there's always somebody who's coming for your job. Like,
oh, yeah. That's a fact.
Or a competitor is going for those leads and your job.
You remember that game? I think it was against San Diego where Nate Peterman came out and threw 3 interceptions in the first half.
I do.
I think it was 3. Christian, correct me if I'm wrong.
I think he had 5 in that game, but it was, I'm not sure. Yeah, check it out, Christian.
We got our version of Joe Rogan's Jamie and checking it out right now. That's Christian. He's the real MVP. I'm going to tell you folks, not all heroes wear capes. But when you're feeling like Nate Peterman heading into the tunnel at halftime as a salesperson, because, it's been X amount of time since a sale. And for roofing, it might be a few days or a week. For something where it's a larger ticket, longer sales cycle, and you're expecting something to close over 30 days, maybe you've gone 60 days without a sale. How do you get back into that Mamba mentality that Kobe had, RIP? How do you get back into that killer mindset where like you don't let your self-doubt overtake your ability to perform on the next conversation you're having.
You know, that's a great point because it does happen, right?
Oh, yeah.
You get in slumps in sports, you get in slumps in sales. That's a very good question. And I think everyone is different, right? So how I try to do it is I realize I go back to my experience and some of the wins I got, right? And understand, hey, I did this. I'm here now, but what got me to that, right? And I think fundamentals are the key. So if you're having a bad, look at yourself. Are you doing everything you did while you were rolling? Yeah. Are you shortcutting things? Are you not asking the right questions? You just gotta look at fundamentals. I think I hate it, and we hear this all the time, right? 5 interceptions.
It was in the first half.
Yeah.
Fuck me. Sorry, guys. It was 5 interceptions.
That's amazing, though.
That's even worse.
Right. Well, and I think you just got to go back to your fundamentals, right? Make your calls, touch all the bases that you touch when you're successful, right? And believe in yourself, right? You got to believe in yourself when you're in sales, because I don't want to. I could do the funnel theory for the dating, but we've all been there, right? If you ask 100 girls, you may get 99 no's to go out with you, right?
Only takes the one yes, though.
It takes the one yes. So do your fundamentals, right? And understand that if you've been there and done that, there's a reason you're in that slump, and try to find a way out of it. And then the other thing you can do is, in an organization, if you have a director of sales, you have other teammates, rely on them a little bit and ask them, hey, have you noticed, am I doing anything different? What's working for you? A lot of salespeople don't like to ask their peers what's working.
But the ones that are doing well love to tell about it.
They do love to tell about it. But they should ask their peers.
Yeah. Should get rid of your ego. Yeah. Because sometimes maybe it's something that you're doing or not doing. Maybe sometimes it's something that's out of your control, right? It's just the market contracted. People are hanging, like an election, let's say.
Yeah.
People aren't ready and willing to spend their money. Maybe there's nothing you can do about it. Maybe there is, but you stand to lose nothing and gain everything by having that conversation, tapping into your peers, especially if they're doing well, because maybe it's something where they're paying attention to something that's evolving around you that you're not seeing, right? So they've tailored their pitch, the way that they follow up, right? Maybe they started text messaging more on follow up as opposed to an email communication. They're getting better open rates, better response rates, which is leading to more deals getting closed. You won't know that if you don't ask.
Well, right. And I one of the things I always did, I wanted to hang out with the guy who was blowing it up. Right. And again, it depends on your ego, right? Because some folks can't do that. But the reality is you want to hang around the successful people, right? In whatever position it is. There's a reason Stefan Diggs caught all those passes from Josh Allen, right? He didn't just show up there, right? He worked to get there. Now, when you, like Nate Peterman, right? Maybe 2 of those balls went off receivers' hands.
Not his fault.
And weren't his fault. You can go in a shell, or you can say, hey, I'm not doing everything I need to do to make him catch that ball. Did I put it where I need to? So look within yourself when you're failing or not hitting your numbers, and then hang out with people that are, and try to figure out why, and ask for advice. That's how I did it. And I don't know if it's right, but
we're here now, thriving.
I'm doing okay. Company's doing well. So
do you see anything in the next 5 years drastically changing in sales? How sales is done, how you find salespeople, how they're managed?
I think technology is a big driver, right? So there's going to be there's always going to be new lead generation tools coming at us. There's going to, you're going to have different organization ways to get customers to find you and buy from you. So I think you're going to have to marry the technologies, right, with the personal touch. Because I think what I see the biggest mistake in my view, and again, I'm just one guy leading, 125 people organization right now, but 8 to 10 salespeople. They they forget about the personal touch. A lot of the people coming into the sales world believe that you can do it all by text, all by email, no personal touch. So I think in the next 5 years, it's using the technology to where it still feels personal, and there's some of both.
Yeah.
I think you're going to have to do that because technology is not going away with AI and all these other things, right? So
I hope not. My stock portfolio will look like shit if it does.
Yeah, that could happen.
Yeah. What would replace it? God.
Yeah, I don't know.
Kind of afraid of AI.
I am too. I was reading an article on that today, and I think you look at some of the bigger CEOs, some people are afraid of it, some aren't. I think you got to lean into it for a bit, just kind of like technology. Right?
I mean, listen, you can do this and that. I tell people all the time. Yeah. While I'm afraid of where it might go, I lean into that motherfucker every day.
Yeah.
I mean, my AI threads within like ChatGPT, Claude, and these other platforms is crazy. I use it so much. This is my trusted advisor. Yeah. It's so funny. So one of our friends, Chuck Toki, he asked me what my superpower is. So I said, I literally use, I don't know, probably 20 to 50 prompts a day within ChatGPT. Like, hey, I'm thinking about doing this. This is my concern. If you or me having context into my business, how would you go about implementing A, B, or C? If this is your concern and this is the case, how would you go about doing this? Right. So I said, hey, ChatGPT, based on our conversations, what is my superpower? Because when Chuck asked me, I'm like, I don't fucking know.
Yeah, what is it? I don't know.
You see the big picture clearly. You move fast and iterate smarter. You synthesize complexity into action. You lead with impact and accountability. And they all had little explanations of each one of those breakdowns. And I was like, I'm about to just come here and have you gas me up every day. Fuck. I'm like, if I need a slump buster, I'm coming right to ChatGPT. And I'm like, yo, why am I great? Tell me how fantastic I am.
I'm sure you're not getting that exact statement at home.
Nope. My dog just barks at me and walks away.
I know I don't get it. No, I'm kidding.
Yeah.
So yeah, that's a good thing. I'm going to use it that way. I think, blow my ego up. Yeah, that's a good thing. Like I think technology going forward is going to be key, but the salespeople that are coming out today, they have to go, companies got to make sure they do their fundamentals and teach them the right way, because you can't just lean into technology 100%, because you still got to do the job, right?
Yeah,
I think.
Yeah, and the personal touch is absolutely huge, because I don't even know, is it causal or just strong correlation between that and the personal touch that you're talking about, right? Or the relationship stuff, right? If you don't have a personal touch, the relationships, they're not going to be as deep. They're not going to be as committed to you, because if you guys rolled out 10 more SKUs tomorrow, how many people would you be able to sell based on their perception of your company and the relationship you have with them, versus if it's transactional, it's like, I got to go through this whole fucking pitch again. Yeah. I got to get feeds from death, make them think that this is the greatest thing since sliced bread, whether it is or it isn't. And like the runway to get to a sale is substantially longer if they trust you based on that relationship. And the deeper that relationship is, the more they'll trust you. If you show them that they can trust you, right? Absolutely.
And I think that's where success comes from, is that long-term relationship. Especially, we are a manufacturer of product, right? So we bring a lot of products in, or we got a new product coming out next month, right? If you've been transactional, you hit it right on the head. It's very hard. It's easy to go to a customer and have that conversation. It doesn't mean they're going to put it in, but it's a lot easier, less time. I've always said, increase your, revenue with your existing base, and they'll help you too. Most of them will help you and give you other leads, right? Like if you're a roofing contractor, like if you did a good job for me, I'm telling 10 people.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? So you got to have a good personal touch. So I think that's important in sales. So.
You got any questions for me?
I do actually. Like, how did you were in the collection world, and then you're in
marketing,
digital marketing and sales. How did that's a big change, sorta,
kind of. So I'll paint the picture for you. So I got into collections when I was young, 18, and I had a couple of friends, parents who did collections. They made a lot of money, and I was like, I like money. I feel like I'd be good at this, and they're like, you'd be good at it. So I started doing that, and I had my daughter young at 19, and I kept doing collections because they allowed me the flexibility to go to school and make enough money to provide for my kid, right? Those were my two most important things. Started with a commitment to myself. I'm going to be the first person in my family to have graduated college. So then I had my daughter. I was like, my timeline just went from graduating at 17, undergrad at 21, law school, be out by 24 and have private practice attorney by 25 to, oh, fuck, I got to figure this out. Like, time to pivot. But I was like, I won't waver from that commitment to myself. So it took me like 9 years to get my degree, and that's fine. Collections allowed me the ability and capacity to provide for her and be flexible. Okay. I couldn't go somewhere else and be like, hey, by the way, Tuesday from noon to 2 and Monday, Wednesday, Friday from 8 to 10, I can't work. And also I want to make like true. 50, 60 grand. Yeah. So that's how I got into collections. That's how I stayed in collections. The second commitment I made to myself, I'm sure there was many between this and that, but the minute I graduate from school, I'm never doing fucking collections again. Yeah, I was good at it. I wasn't the prototypical you see on like Dateline where it's like, we're sending the cops and there's gonna be a sheriff at your house. Right. I would just talk to people like, what happened? What's going on? There's a lot of ways to fix this if you want to. Do you want to? Yes, I want to. Okay, let's do it together.
Being a sales guy.
But especially in like, 2008, 2009, like there were a lot of people that just got turned upside down by, I don't want to say it had nothing to do with anything that they did, but choices that were made based off misleading information and lack of understanding of what potentially could happen with like variable rate mortgages and shit. So that always worked for me, and I felt good about it. I didn't feel like a piece of shit when I went home, right? But it was crushing to the soul to be somebody's therapist every day, being told to fuck off on every third call, whatever. So once I graduated, I was super broke, put in a lot of applications, and then a company took a chance on me. They were a digital marketing company. Nice. And I was like, this is super interesting. Because in my mind, I said, okay, if I'm a business owner, I'm spending money. My main concern is, what am I making? How do I know what I'm making if it's on a newspaper, if it's on a billboard? I probably don't know. But with digital marketing, I started researching, you can track these things. You can show them. I was like, that would make it really easy to sell somebody more stuff or sell new people stuff, right? Yeah. So I started doing sales. And after 6 years, we had irreconcilable differences on, what the fulfillment should look like and all things, right? And they weren't very receptive to feedback from people in the trenches. I was like, I just feel like this should be different. And maybe I've been wrong all these years, and, we're going to test that theory. So that's when I decided to go out, start Ascend, started building the company. And then I just thought I was listening. The reason I do this is I just thoroughly enjoy talking to people. Yeah,
that's awesome.
Getting different perspectives, like it could be so impactful, not only for like the audience and what you or anyone else on the show brings to them as far as value, but for me to make me think a different way, for me to learn more things. It only helps. I love it.
Yeah, that's exciting. It's funny. I worked for the big company, right? That's where I started. I knew after 9 years, right? Yeah. Same as you kind of, I can't do this, right? I got to go try something else. And I did. And I realized the smaller entrepreneurial spirit is always kind of where I grew up, right? And I really appreciate when people take chances. I worked for an owner who did. He's made a great life of it. He took a chance. He did well, right? So, your space is awesome, and I think technology, you asked what's going to happen. Well, technology is key. And I do know from the trades, because I was in building materials, that you're doing a service that, smaller business owners in that field or construction need, right? Because that's one of the hard parts. They can't always get the training. They can't always get their people trained as fast because they're always out doing stuff.
It's tough. So, you're $1 million company. You're handling ordering materials, dealing with customers, selling new customers, any issues that pop up, your QuickBooks, all these different hats you're wearing. You only got one head.
You got one. I know. My brother-in-law was a contractor, and I used to.
He need more leads?
Yeah, he did. He's out of it now. Damn. But he used to, I felt bad because everybody else's house was beautiful.
Right.
And then I walk in his house, it was beautiful, but he had all these unfinished projects, right? Mm-hmm. Like because of all the hats. Right. So technology, training, all that stuff. It's cool you're doing it.
I appreciate it.
Yeah.
Well, thank you so much for coming in. I've thoroughly enjoyed this. I hope you did too.
Yeah.
And thank you for you at home watching. I hope you guys pulled something out of this. Drop a comment, share it with somebody who would help. Thanks again to the team at Roofer for help making this happen. You're on.
Thanks, man.
5, 4, 3, 2, 1, 0.